Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Preparing to Start School webinar. My name is Kim Waldron. I'm a special educator with Early Ed, and this is Belinda, who will be helping and helping out this evening, as I will be also helping out. It's a little bit unnerving, I've got to say, because I'm talking to myself. But anyway, I will get used to that. So hello, everyone out there. It's nice that you've joined us. I'm going to start with an acknowledgement to country. I would like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, of elders past, present and emerging, on which this meeting takes place. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We will be recording tonight's webinar so that other people can access it if they'd like to. Please use the chat and the Q&A if you have any questions. And also we will be doing a poll. And the activity tonight is being funded by the DET, New South Wales Start Strong Pathways and Sector Development Capacity Building Program. So we thank them for their support. I'm just going to do the poll. If you could please answer. So our question tonight is, how confident are you to support your child with starting school? And there's just a range of options there. If you wouldn't mind, please filling that out. Thank you, everyone. I might stop it there. And I'll share the results. So we can see that most of us are sort of in the middle, which is good, gives us a bit of a chance to hopefully learn some new information or get a bit of a refresher on what we might already know. So thank you for participating in that. I will just close that. Sorry, I just have to work out how to get back to my screen. Here I am. Just bear with me. Thank you. Okay, so the outcomes that we are aiming for this evening is to gain further ideas and strategies to support children to be ready to start school. Identify how these skills can be practiced through everyday routines, and be empowered to see what skills you're already practicing in your environment, because I'm sure there are lots of great things that are already happening. The topics that we'll be covering this evening are around routine-based interventions, self-help and independent skills, positive behaviour supports, co- and self-regulation, social skills, academic skills, also how to build a relationship with your child's school, and just a little bit of information about if your child is ready for school in 2022. Some of you may have attended our earlier webinar and some of you may not have, and that's okay. There'll be some new information and there'll also be some information that we'll just revise. Okay, we're on to slide 6. Sorry, Belinda, I can't see your screen when I have yours open, so I'm just going to trust that we're in sync. This slide demonstrates how the various environments and people involved are all connected. So obviously we don't have control over all of those environments. Tonight we're really focusing on the areas that we do have some influence over, which is the Ready Family and the Ready Early Childhood Services, depending on where you are from and what hat you're wearing this evening. We also have a lovely slide here that talks about the team around the child. Now, everyone has a team around their child. If you have a child that has additional needs, you may have additional people in that team. You might have some NDIS funding. Please remember to also involve those professionals that you have supporting you. And if you need more information, please contact your service provider or Early Ed. We're always happy to help guide you in the right direction if you have any questions. Okay, we are going to start with routine-based interventions, as it's one of the foundations for learning new skills. A good routine will help your child predict what is going to happen next, as well as remember what they need to do each day. These are great tools in helping children transition more easily into the school environment. And they're also best practice in early childhood intervention to use daily routines to teach and practice skills. And there are several ways that this can be made more effective. Keep your routines consistent. So wake up, for example, at a regular time every day, go to bed at a regular time. Work on one routine at a time. It's too hard for any of us to learn too many new skills all at once. It can be overwhelming for you and your child. So focus on one or two routines that you consider really important. And you might also like to use simple visual pictures for both a morning and an afternoon routine. Children often respond really well if you take photos of them completing each task, because it's kind of like being on a movie screen, which is pretty exciting for most children. Things like eating breakfast, brushing their teeth, you can put those up and then tick them off as they get done each morning. It's very just reinforcing in itself, really. The other thing that you might like to consider is a visual schedule for days of the week. So, when they start to go to school, often there'll be things like library day or sports day. When do you need to wear your PE uniform? When do you need to bring your library book back? It's great to have that up on a calendar. It also helps your child to learn the days of the week. And one of the most important things around routines is also it helps you as a parent to remember what you're working on. We also benefit from those routines. It means we don't have to, reinvent the wheel every day because we know exactly what's happening. Okay, we're going to start with self-help and independent skills. I've broken this down into 3 separate areas. The first one we're going to look at is looking after their body at school. That was just sort of the general heading that I chose for it. And it covers areas like applying hand gel, applying sunscreen. One of the things that, we're getting very used to in COVID times is the old pump pack of the gel. Watch your child. Can they push the button? Can they rub their hands? Not just like this, but, rub it all over to make it obviously as effective as possible. The same thing with sunscreen. Can your child put sunscreen on independently? Hand washing is another very important skill. Can they do it with different tap handles, maybe different to the ones that you have at home? When you go out and about, you might have turn ones, or some of the ones in older schools might be the push button ones where they stay on for a certain amount of time and require sometimes a bit of muscle power to get them to turn on. So those are good ones to practice too if you see them out and about in the community. Wiping your child's nose, for them to do it hygienically and independently as possible. Obviously, if they have a runny nose, often during COVID times, unfortunately, they'd probably be sent home, but it is a really good skill for them still to have. Can they take the tissue out of the box? Just one tissue, not 5. Can they wipe and blow their nose neatly, put it in the bin afterwards, wash their hands or put a little bit of gel on afterwards just to make sure it's all nice and clean? And going to the toilet is a really big one. Often when I talk to parents, it's a question that I get asked, how does my child use the toilet at school? Because the difference between an early childhood setting and a school setting are quite big. Early childhood settings, often the toilets will be all together. They'll be in an area where everyone can see, and if they do need some help, there'll be an educator on hand. School toilets are not like that. Teachers usually can't enter a toilet on their own, the whole toilet block, let alone each individual cubicle. Usually 2 teachers need to be in there just for child protection issues. So you can see that, it is something that your child does need to get a little bit more independent with. And think about things like, can they lock the cubicle door by themselves? Can they unlock it by themselves? That's a really important skill, obviously, as well. And those are things sometimes that we don't necessarily, want our child to do and when we go out in public. But it's a good thing to practice and just have a little bit of a think about. Also, can they use different styles of toilet paper? Some of them are the little tissues that you pull out. Some of them are still the rolls. Can they push the button on different toilets to make it flush? I'm also just about managing their clothing. Can they pull their pants up and down independently? So you can see these are all quite important skills to have. Now, I did just want to preface this because I don't want anyone walking away thinking, oh my goodness, my child doesn't have, these skills. And this really goes for our entire presentation tonight. It's about just giving you a little bit of a sense of things that you could start working on or continue working on. Definitely to empower you to think about all the things that you're already doing really well. It's not meant to be that your child needs to, pass all of these skills before they get into kindergarten. These are skills that, you know, we learn throughout our whole lives, and they'll continue doing that as they go through school. They don't need to have every single one of these skills down pat before they start. That's not what this is about. So I hope that, you know, that's not the impression that we've given with these topics. Okay, our next slide is around looking after their clothing. So often the school uniform is quite different to, you know, the casual clothes that they might wear around the house. So it's really good fun to just let them practice wearing their uniform. I know sometimes we worry about them getting dirty, but that's okay. It's good for them to get used to the clothes. You know, are there any tags that maybe you need to tuck out or any bits that you need to adjust so that they're a bit more comfortable when they go to school? You know, things like shoes. When you're buying shoes, have a think about, you know, do you want to do Velcro or laces? And one of the things also to remember is similar to what I talked about in regards to the staffing in early childhood versus the school. There are less teachers in a school situation. So there definitely aren't people who are going to be able to, you know, do your child's laces up whenever they need it. So if you do think you'd like to do laces, it's a really good idea to have a practice of that at home and get them, you know, a bit more familiar with that skill. Also at schools, you know, some schools will have it where they take their shoes on and off, maybe to play in the sandpit, or maybe they're doing a sporting activity like yoga or something. So it's nice if they can also take their socks on and off. And, you know, I've put in here in my notes and tuck them neatly into their shoes. But again, you know, I know teenagers who can't necessarily do that. So again, it's a skill, you know, that we continue to work on. Taking jumper on and off is a nice skill for them to have as well. Think about the school hat. You know, the school hat might be slightly different setup to the casual hat that they wear. And think about any zippers or buttons, you know, that maybe their home clothing or their casual clothing doesn't necessarily have. So that's a fun thing to practice as well. Okay, and the last one that I've got around self-help and independent skills is looking after their belongings. And again, this is definitely a lifelong, you know, skill that some of us adults are probably still practicing. But things like placing items in the school bag, you know, that's a fun one to practice during the holidays. You know, go on a picnic in the backyard and get them to pack their bag. It's also nice to let your child pack their bag each morning before school. I know, you know, time can be we can all be a bit time poor in the morning, but it does really build that nice sense of, you know, respect for their own belongings and having a sense of what's in their bag. They have control over that. Putting backpack on and taking it off. So that's another nice one to practice as well if you've got a school backpack. Again, the zippers, so opening the zipper on the bag, that's quite a unique movement that we don't really do in other areas of our lives. So that's a nice one to practice. Pencil case, if they might be taking a pencil case to school. And the last one that we have is around eating time. And just before I came here, I thought I'd just get a few little containers that I could maybe show you. So eating time, it's a really nice one to practice different opening and closing. So you can see with these, you know, there's quite a lot of movement that's required, and then to line it up and get it lined up and put back together. Often sort of give the example of, you know, opening it, it's great because they're, you know, they're keen and they want to get the food out. But then there might be a little bit of food left. It's also nice to encourage them to close it. And that way the food doesn't end up in the bottom of the bag, you know, for us to clean up when we get home. Have a think about when you're buying containers. You know, often we look at the colours or we look at, you know, maybe characters that are on it, which is great and very motivating, but also look at the way that containers open and close. So this one alone has 4 different sections that need to be open and closed. Plus it has a little section in here that needs to be open and closed. And then I need to be able to reverse all of that, which I'm not even sure I can do on camera, and get all of those bits. Oh, I did pretty well. Get all those bits to click back into place. So that's quite tricky. I've got another one that's a bit similar here. And the same goes with drink bottles. You know, that's also a nice one. Again, we look at, you know, the little characters that are on it. But have a think, you know, this one requires quite a bit of movement for me to get even just this top part off, which I practiced earlier and I still can't do it. And then I need to pull this part off in order to be able to have a drink. And then if I don't want it to leak in my bag, I've got to push that down and then I've got to put this back on. And then if it's a really hot day, I might want to refill it. So that's quite tricky as well. Now, it's some of these things, obviously, they're unavoidable. You know, you need to get a drink bottle that works well. But they're just things to think about, you know, when you're going shopping. And really, I think the main takeaway, I suppose, from this is, you know, practice these skills at home in a fun, routine-based way. Role play is great, you know, if you can pretend that the toys are going to school. And let's pack the toys bag and let's put the clothes, let's put your uniform pants on Big Teddy, and have a go with the zips. I think between now and starting school, it's really nice just to, and again, do it as they go through school as well. You know, really reflect on what your child would do if you weren't there. So have a little think, you know, how much am I helping? Because often, you know, we step in and we help and we don't realise that that's what we're doing, which is great because, you know, we care about them and we, you know, we want them to do well. But have a think about if you weren't there, would they be able to do those things themselves and problem solve those situations themselves? You know, take the time to step back, slow down and let children have a try at these everyday skills. They're really important teaching moments, and it will really help to build their confidence when they start school. Okay, now we're going to move on to behaviour and some positive strategies that you can use when children are transitioning into the school environment. So this is just a little slide which I quite like because it gives us a really nice visual around what the behaviour looks like, and what you can see happening underneath, or what you can't see happening underneath. As you can see, the visible behaviour is the tip of the iceberg, and there are lots of variables that contribute to behaviours, some of which, sometimes most of which, we can't see. There are some variables that we can't control, but there are some that we can definitely influence. You know, things like we've talked about, we've got in there routines. You know, have you made it like a predictable routine for your child? You know, a safe environment that they feel happy to have a go in. Helping them with some of their sensory processing skills and sensory regulation. That's a bit of a buzzword at the moment. It is a really important one. We'll talk a little bit about self-regulation later. That's going to be our main focus. Not so much around the sensory, but obviously we do all live and use our senses a lot. Communication and parenting strategies. So these are all areas that influence, you know, what behaviours could be occurring. So sometimes people will, you know, will say to me, you know, my child or the child goes from, you know, 0 to 10 in that they seem very calm and then all of a sudden they're not. And, you know, I think, you know, sometimes because we don't know what goes on in anyone's inner world. We can only have a, you know, a guess based on our knowledge of that person. So there are things, you know, that are happening for that person that same as what happens with us. You know, we can appear perfectly calm and then all of a sudden, you know, and people who are looking at us might think, oh, you know, why are they all of a sudden sad or angry? But there are lots of processing things that we might have had, you know, in between that. So we're just going to have a little look at some of the ways that you can manage some of those behaviours or support your child to manage the behaviours. And we focus a lot on positive behaviour management, which really is the best way to help guide your child's behaviour. It means giving your child attention when they behave well rather than punishing your child when they do something you don't like. And that may sound fairly sort of simple, but, you know, you can, if you sort of take a step back and, you know, picture yourself in the busyness of your household or busyness of your centre, if you're from a, you know, an early childhood centre, or business of a classroom. You know, often it's the behaviours that we don't necessarily want are the ones that stand out more. So we may, you know, be accidentally reinforcing those behaviours, and we don't want to do that. So there are tips for using positive behaviour supports. One of the key ones is really just remembering that all behaviour has a meaning and fulfills a need. So behaviour is about communicating, and our job is to help decipher the meaning of those behaviours. Use language that describes what you want the child to do rather than what you don't want them to do. So often when we're, you know, focusing on a behaviour, we might say, you know, don't run, it's not safe, or don't swing on your chair, or don't slam the door. So you can see by putting the don't in front of that and focusing on the behaviour that we don't want, you know, we're not helping the child to really learn specifically what do you want. Well, actually, I'd like you to walk. Great, walking, you're being safe. You know, you're sitting with your chair flat. Well done. Closing the door quietly. Thank you. Those sorts of things. So those are things that you really is a good idea to focus on. Use specific praise and positive language. So like I just did then, I did it really explicitly, and I gave, you know, quite positive language and was specific about what I was talking about. Sorry, my daughter has just walked in. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Use visuals to provide incentives. So it's nice sometimes to have a reward chart, which might help your child to work towards a particular goal. And again, focusing on them, catch them being good. I often like to use the phrase, look for the good, just because it has a little bit of a rhyme to it. And it's a nice reminder in your own head as well. And it's also important for us to reflect on, like I said, about what those behaviours mean. And sometimes I find it really useful if you can take a little bit of time to collect some data about your child's behaviour, which really is just collecting some information about their behaviour. So I'll just show you an example of that, which might look a little bit wordy, but I do find it is quite a nice way to give yourself a chance just to reflect. So first of all, it's about looking at understanding, and that's really what this chart is about. If you can understand why your child is behaving in a particular way, then you can work out how best to respond. So before you choose your behaviour management strategy, it's a good idea to write down some information about any behaviours of concern that you might have. This gives you a chance to step back and reflect on any possible patterns, and then use that information to develop strategies to try. And also think about your child's developmental stage and how that might be linked to challenging behaviours. For example, tantrums are very common in toddlers and preschoolers because at this age, children have really big feelings and maybe not enough words to express them. And as your child develops, they'll learn more about behaviours. So I'll just run you quickly through the chart. So we've got, and often people look at this and think, oh, that's a lot of words, but I often just suggest that you've got just a blank sheet of A4 paper. I've got one here that's not blank, but, blank sheet of A4 paper, you leave it sitting somewhere where it kind of reminds you, not somewhere where siblings can read it, because obviously, or other children in the childcare centre can read it, because obviously it's, private information for that particular child. And you just draw your columns. First of all, it's the date and the time when it occurred, because you might find there's a pattern with that. We often sort of witching hour, oh yes, 5 o'clock, every day, this is kind of when it happens, or just before dinner, could it be that they're particularly hungry? What the activity was. So, it might be every day around putting shoes on that might be causing the problem, and you might not be realising that until you've seen it written down, 3 times, and you think, oh, there is a bit of a pattern there. Antecedent, so that's the A part of the chart, is really just the trigger. So what happened before the behaviour occurred. And again, just thinking back to that iceberg model that we had before, we've got, external and obviously possible internal triggers, which, you may or you may not know, depending on, if your child's giving you any clues on what some of those internal triggers might be. And then try and write down as much information as you can about what the behaviour looks like. So how long does it go for? What sort of length of time? Say if your child is screaming, it might feel like it goes on for 10 minutes, but really maybe it only goes on for a couple of minutes, and maybe they stop and start during that time. And then also write down the consequence. So what happened after that behaviour? Say, for example, if your child screams, or if the child screams, what is your response, or what is someone else's response to that? And that's what we mean by the consequence. Now, often we sort of think, oh, consequence is, sort of a negative word, but it's really just what happens in this scenario. It's what happens after the behaviour. And those are really important. That's really important information to write down, because what it allows you to do is think, oh, maybe I'm actually accidentally reinforcing that behaviour, which obviously we don't want to do. So from that chart, I often suggest to parents is, you're not, and classroom teachers as well, you're not going to be able to write down every bit of information, because unless you have the privilege of having somebody observe you and write that information down, which is really valuable as well. But usually we're living the behaviour while we're in it, while we're writing it down. So we're in it and we're writing these things down. So you're not going to be able to get every single bit of information, but often it's really good just to even get a little bit of information, and that will help you, like I said, look for some patterns. Now, from the behaviour, we're going to move into and self-regulation, because that's really a big part of the skills that children need and adults need, to monitor their behaviour and to regulate their own behaviour. It's a very important skill that we continue to work on throughout our whole lives. So at the top of the slide, you can see we've got and self-regulation. Self-regulation is a term that most of us are quite familiar with, which is about, understanding and managing your emotions and behaviours, and, regulating your own reactions to feelings and things that are happening around you. Co-regulation is really just having support from a trusted person for that child, so a trusted adult in their life, who can help them to do that, because little people, they need to be taught to self-regulate. They can't do that on their own. And I suppose even if you think about us as adults, sometimes it's nice for someone to come and say, oh, would you like a cup of tea? I mean, that could maybe even be called, a sort of co-regulation where they're helping us look after ourselves. So you support your child with this by helping them to develop safe relationships, identify how they're feeling, and give them strategies to help calm themselves down. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. I can't see if there are any questions, Belinda, because I haven't got that screen open. So I might just, if you'd like to interrupt me because people have asked, feel free to do that.
People have been putting comments in the chat,
yes,
and they've been addressed. But yeah, participants are more than welcome to continue to put questions in, and I'll be monitoring that while Kim presents. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. Okay, so we're just going to talk a little bit about why self-regulation is important. So self-regulation helps children to learn at school. Obviously within a classroom, they need to be able to sit and listen, follow instructions, follow the routine within the classroom. Self-regulation also helps children to behave in socially acceptable ways and to make friends. We'll talk a little bit more about social skills as we go along as well. So you need to be socially acceptable. So that means they need to be able to control impulses, take turns in games and conversations, share toys and express emotions in an appropriate way. And again, you can see from all of that language that, it's quite a complex skill to learn. There's a lot of variables to it and a lot of support needed along the way. And it allows them also to become more independent. As a child becomes, is able to self-regulate more, it helps them to make appropriate decisions about what behaviours they're going to choose to participate in, and learn how to behave in new situations with less guidance from you as they go along. Okay, how and when self-regulation develops. So children develop self-regulation through warm and responsive relationships, and by watching the adults around them. You're a very important role model for the children in your life, whether they be in a classroom or whether they be at home. And it really starts when children are babies. So, for example, a baby might suck their fingers for comfort, or look away from their caregiver. They need a break from attention or are getting tired. Toddlers can wait short time, for food and toys, but they might also still snatch toys from other children if it's something they really want. That's something to be aware of around roads and road safety. So your child may walk quite happily along, next to you on the footpath, but then if they see a ball or something on the road, they might not have the self-regulation skills to be able to stop themselves from, going after that item that they want. And it develops, through the toddler and preschool years and keeps going into adulthood. Just to go back to preschoolers. So preschoolers are starting to know how to play with other children and understand what's expected of them. School-age children are getting even better at controlling their own wants and needs, imagining other people's perspectives and seeing both sides of a situation. So, for example, they might be able to disagree with other children without having an argument. Remember also that each child is an individual and they can be at different developmental stages, even if they are the same age. Not everyone in kindergarten is going to be at the same stage of self-regulation. Some will need a little bit more support, some will be a little bit more independent. And again, that's something to talk to your childcare centre or school about if you do have any concerns or you feel like your child might need a little bit more extra support around that area. Okay, helping children learn and practice self-regulation. So we're working on your child's skills for understanding and managing emotions, and there are a few different ways that you can do that. You can use language to label emotions, so really be clear about, I'm feeling happy, or you look like you might be sad. It's also good to talk about it in relation to shows that you might be watching on TV. Books that you're reading. Often there's a lot of great children's books which, not necessarily about feelings, but some of the pictures are so fabulous that you can often refer to the, how is that person feeling? Look at their face. How is Bear feeling in that situation? What made Bear feel sad? And often it's really nice to be able to talk about it a little bit more removed. So it's to do with characters, it's to do with a book. It's not necessarily to do with them or somebody close to them, which might be a more vulnerable state to be in. They may not be able to say to you, I feel sad. That's sort of a next step along, and they need some support around that. When you see your child showing a particular emotion, you might label it for them and talk about it. For example, you have a big smile on your face. You must be happy to see me. Oh, you look like you're feeling sad or frustrated because you can't play with the dog right now. So that gives them a chance to kind of reflect on their own feeling without them having to produce what that feeling is or talk to you about what the language around that is. You're helping them with that. Label the emotions your child sees in you and other people. So you might say, oh, Auntie's feeling sad because she misses Grandpa. Also help your child explore emotions through play. Puppets are great, singing, like I said, reading, messy play, lots of different situations that you can talk about different feelings. And again, it's nice to role play as well, similar to what we talked about in the self-care skills. Role play is really lovely. You might have everyone, all the toys sitting down. Oh, this one is sad because they're last. Oh, maybe tomorrow they'll be first. Those sorts of things. It's also nice to talk about a strategy that your child might be able to use, a little narrative they might be able to use in their head. Oh, it's okay. I'm sad about not being the leader today, but maybe tomorrow I'll be the leader. And that obviously takes time. It takes time for them to be able to pause and to process those feelings. Use suitable calming down strategies. So, depending on your relationship with the child, a hug might be appropriate. Deep breathing, helping them to practice deep breathing. Yoga's become a lot more popular in the last, however many years, and children respond quite well to that. Things like cosmic yoga or dance breaks, those sorts of things are nice calming down strategies, or to help your child just to feel happier in themselves. Things like going for a bike ride or having a jump on the trampoline. Often making a choice board of happy or calming activities is quite nice. And you can do that, with each individual child, or you could do that in a classroom. Children could choose and you could have it hanging up as a poster. To individualise it for each child is also nice. So if your child at home maybe has some difficulty choosing an activity when they're feeling, a bit upset, and this is not at the point when they're super upset, because if they're at that really high stage, they're not able to regulate at that point. These sorts of activities are nice to introduce as they're kind of building, or just when they're feeling happy, and it keeps that level of self-regulation a bit higher, which is nice as well. And children often respond really well to that. If you can get some photos of them doing their favourite activities, that's fabulous, because it's like a poster all about them. They're even more of the movie star, which is fun. Plan for challenging situations. So if you know that going shopping is hard, you could have a little chat before you go and just sort of say, remember, the shop has lots of things that can break. It's okay for you to look, but please don't touch. And you might gently sort of say as you go into the shop, remember, we're just looking. And then the other thing that's really nice is to then praise that behaviour, which is what we talked about before. Look for the good, as they're walking around the shop. Love the way you're not touching, good looking. And remember to do that with your entire face and your entire body language if you can, A thumb up I often quite like. I know it's, some children, a bit older children, think it's a bit daggy, but it's a really nice one just to go, yeah, well done. And you can do it without having to have, a verbal. You can do that from across a little way. Good job, great sitting, or good waiting for me. And praise your child when they attempt or demonstrate self-regulation. So it's not about them always doing exactly the right thing. It's about them having a go. So same as what we were talking about with the self-help skills. It's really good to praise attempts, great waiting for your turn, or I like the way you shared. It was a bit tricky, wasn't it? Because, he took the toy, but I like the way you had a go and you stayed calm. That might be a little bit long-winded. You might want to shorten that a little, but you get the idea. It's nice to give that specific feedback. And also model it for your child, so you're trying to really show them what self-regulation looks like. And often that's sort of around, well, one, obviously you showing those behaviours, but maybe also giving a bit of a narrative or self-talk about what you're doing. So things like, I'd really like to keep gardening, but if I don't clean up now, we won't be able to get to soccer on time. Or let me write that on the calendar so I don't forget. Or, somebody took the last Tim Tam, but that's okay. I might have some tomorrow when we go shopping. So those sorts of things, it gives them an idea of, okay, this is what you're doing and this is how you're doing it. Okay, I'm just going to share with you one of the ways that it's becoming a little bit more popular in classrooms, and it's called the 4 zones. So this is one way that we put some visuals to how children are regulating, and it's to teach self-regulation. It's called the zones of regulation, and you can see from that slide there that it has 4 very clear colours which help children associate particular feelings and behaviours. It's a behavioural approach, and it's really about categorising the different ways that we feel and states of alertness we experience in those 4 different zones. It's a framework that teaches students how to become more independent and to control more of their own emotions and impulses, and improve their ability to solve conflicts, to problem solve conflicts. And it also helps students to move away from adult prompts and to start taking some personal responsibility. Again, it's a process. I have seen this being used in classrooms. I think it's also a nice one that you could transfer to the home. I'll show you a couple of visual examples of that on the next slide. But it's one that you could help your child, again, individualise. And so you can see from there, from the red zone, is an extremely heightened state, and you're very, very alert and your emotions are quite intense. So they may be experiencing anger, rage, devastation or terror when they're in the red zone. So you can see it's that really high level of, a child not feeling safe or a person not feeling safe. The yellow zone, they may be experiencing stress. It's elevated emotions, anxiety, excitement, silliness. So it can also be, it can be frustration, but it can also be overly silly or overexcited. It can also be nervousness. But you have a little bit more control over those than you do in the red zone. So the red zone is it's quite difficult to have control once you're in that state. But the yellow, you have a little bit more control with support, obviously, for younger children. Green is a person maybe described as happy, they're really focused, they're content, and they're really ready to learn in that green zone. And it's a calm state of alertness. It's often what we kind of talk about in the yoga, breathe in calm alertness, so that, it helps you kind of regulate. And this is the zone where optimal learning occurs. So we want students and we want your child to be children, in the early childhood centres. I'm not sure where everyone's from, so I'm trying to make sure I use the language that everyone can connect to, but I'm sure you understand what I mean. And it's really about, that where optimal learning occurs. Blue is a low state of alertness and feeling quite down. So someone might be sad, they might be tired, they might be sick, or they might be bored. So if the activity is not, interesting enough for them, people can get bored, or it's gone on too long. So really what we're aiming for is to be in the green zone. Now, obviously, none of us are in the green zone all of the time, and that's not what our expectation is either. We will move in and out of different zones, but as much as possible, trying to teach children the skills that they're keeping themselves in that regulated zone, that green zone. And I'll just show you a couple of examples. So these are some examples that you might use in the classroom or home situation. I'm not quite sure if it's showing up. You don't necessarily need to be able to read the writing. But you can see with the car, the half circle and the arrow on it, you can see we've got the colours there. So we've got some visuals of cars, and sort of the language that's often used is, how is your engine running? So, relating it to that car metaphor. Is your engine really slow and you don't feel like doing anything? Or is it in the green zone and you're feeling really happy and ready to go? Or yellow, you might be going a little bit too fast. Oh, red, yep, okay, that's not good because we've, crashed into a tree, for want of a better phrase. But it shows you quite clearly the visuals. And so what happens is, when we talk about the 4 zones in a classroom, we don't talk about the slide that I showed you earlier. We really use child-centered language. And the one on the top there that you can see, which goes from the blue to the green to the yellow to the red, going upwards, gives you a few different little tips. So one, it's got some visuals on the side, which is nice. So it allows, all children of any reading ability to be able to access those from the visuals on the left-hand side there. There are also some words in the middle column. So tired, sick, blah, cool, relaxed, exploding, boiling. So they're really child words that your child would be able to relate to, you know, with a bit of teaching. And then on the right-hand side, it has some ideas of things that they can do to get themselves out of that zone, or to stay in the zone and focus on the, you know, the good work that they might be doing in the green zone. And you can see how that can transfer quite nicely. You know, I mean, you could find those pictures it's called the Alert program, and we've got the reference there. And you could find that and print it off. You could easily get your child to draw one yourself. And you might like to get them to put in, you know, their feeling words that you might use in your family or in your classroom. That helps them to relate to those particular feelings as they're going on. Okay, and part of being able to self-regulate is also having, you know, the opportunity to be able to learn social skills and get along with others. So you can see how we followed a bit of a journey, and self-regulating is obviously really important for your child to be able to make friends and get along with people in the classroom as well, even if they're not necessarily their friend. Children will follow a pattern of development with their social play skills. So it starts, you know, with solitary play, where they'll start playing alone with different toys. Then it will move to parallel play, which means that, you know, children might be, you often see this in sand pits, you know, where they're playing with the same toys, but they're not necessarily interacting with each other. They're just kind of building side by side. And then it starts to move into them paying attention to some of the things that are happening, you know, with that parallel play partner or person next to them. And then we start moving into associative play, which is playing and sharing with others, you know, giving and taking, sharing toys, and then really going into your cooperative play, which is playing games with rules with others. And you can see how, you know, as you move along, there is quite a bit of support needed as children move through those stages. And your child can be supported to move through these stages by gently introducing an idea or strategy from the next stage. But it's also important to remember that they need adult support and encouragement to build their skills and their confidence. You know, for example, a child who's at the solitary play stage won't be able to jump into cooperative play stage, you know, because that's sort of where the developmental stages come into it. And I often like to kind of use the analogy, it's not 100% correct, but I think it's nice. It helps us to kind of remember, you know, if we get a bit frustrated and we think, oh, why is my child not at the next developmental stage? But it's a little bit like, you know, if a child cannot move, you know, from not being able, they can't, say, for example, if they can't roll over independently, they're not going to be able to go from not being able to roll over to then running because they're not developmentally ready, and there are stages that they need to go through and there's support that they need as they go through those stages. Okay, so what are some of the skills that are required for making friends? You know, children need to be able to wait, they need to be able to take their turn, they need to be able to share and listen. And again, referring back to the other slide as well, these skills are quite complex and they take time to practice and develop, you know, and as many times as you can throughout your routine, the routines in your day, you know, try and build some of those skills in. They're really important. Empathy, and empathy is yeah, very tricky emotion, can be as well. And some children need to be really explicitly taught that. And again, it's great to be able to do that with your child's favourite toys. And, oh, Teddy's feeling sad. You know, they didn't want to go to bed yet. You're feeling sad? And so, you know, building that kind of language into your everyday. Social cues, so picking up on social cues such as body language or subtle meanings in everyday interactions. Those subtle, you know, meanings and those social cues are really complex. You know, even for us adults, it can be really tricky to work out, you know, what is happening for the other person, the person that we might be talking with. Tuning into things like facial expressions, you know, body language, what does crossing your arms mean, and knowing, you know, how to know when someone is joking or really scared. You know, it can be in things like, you know, if a child is playing chasing, you know, it can be really fun and everyone can be laughing, and then, you know, the laughter kind of takes a little bit of a turn sometimes, and that can be a really subtle cue that the child is not having fun anymore. And so it's, you know, giving that child the language to be able to say, you know, stop, I've had enough, and then also letting the other child, you know, work out, oh, okay, can you hear that's a little bit different? I think they've stopped having fun. And these are all things that are taught, you know, it's good to try and talk about as explicitly as you can when you have the time. And there are different ways that these things can be taught, these skills can be taught at home. Turn taking, it's good to have, appropriate age games like memory, or different card games, or doing puzzles together where you each might take a turn to put different pieces in. Talking about different feelings, you might have visuals up of different feelings. One of the things that's really nice, that's come out of our increase in mobile phone use is the emojis. So lots of children will have, they're quite familiar with the emojis, and it's quite easy to find, large emojis that you could print off from the internet and have them hanging around the house. Oh, look at that, you're feeling a bit sick, or that one means they're shy, or that one, that one means they're angry. So they're good ways to kind of build up some of that emotional literacy and that language around feelings. Okay, so now we're moving on to teaching social and emotional skills in everyday routines. So it's really important, like I said, to use teachable moments, build them into your everyday routine. So you might have every afternoon for afternoon tea, one person gets to share the plate around, or if you're in the childcare centre, I know this is not a COVID-friendly example, but you get the idea. Is we used to be able to share a plate of food around, or maybe each person can be responsible for can you take a pencil from the pot? So there are different ways that children can learn those social and emotional skills and the sharing within the the everyday environment. And like I said, make it part of the everyday language that you use and the way you interact with each other. It's also really important not to try and teach some of these social skills at the point of crisis, which we've all been guilty of that. We'll talk about it when the child is very agitated, or they've hurt themselves, or they're really upset because their friend has taken their toy, and that's when we start to use some of this language, or we start to introduce some words that they're not at the point there where they're able to listen to that. The incident has already happened. They're upset and their brain isn't ready to learn. There's quite a lot of information that's, coming out in recent years around the brain and how the brain reacts in times of stress, that it really kind of shuts down. We can't necessarily hear when we're very upset. So it's good to, just keep that in mind. Again, it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. And it could also be reinforcing, undesired behaviours. So there might be some behaviours that you might be reinforcing that you don't mean to be, as we sort of talked about a little bit earlier. Okay, now the last one we're going to talk about is around academic skills. And I know there's often a lot of concerns about this. I know as a preschool teacher, there's often a big question that I get asked, what skills do they need to have before they go into kindergarten? Do they need to be able to write their name, or do they need to be able to hold a pencil correctly, or those sorts of things. We're just going to have a little look at a Department of Education clip about the Best Start assessment, which is done in most schools, and that will just give you a little bit of information. So we'll watch that and then we'll come back to our slides.
Sorry, I'll just get that open and share screen. Okay. I hope it's loading.
Picture was there before, wasn't it? Yeah, there it is.
Kim, can you hear that sound?
No, there's no sound.
Okay, I'm just going to reshare that again. I'm sorry.
We tried to work on the technical difficulties beforehand, but some of them are unpredictable.
The Best Start Kindergarten Assessment is a statewide assessment that helps teachers identify the literacy and numeracy skills which your child brings with them at the beginning of kindergarten. The Best Start Kindergarten Assessment has been conducted in New South Wales public schools since 2010 and helps teachers understand a student's literacy and numeracy knowledge upon entry to school. The assessment does not require students to prepare or study, so don't be concerned if your child can't answer all the questions. The Best Start Kindergarten Assessment provides teachers with information so they can plan effective teaching and learning programs. The assessment takes about 20 minutes each for the literacy and numeracy parts. teachers usually conduct the literacy and numeracy components separately. The assessment is conducted one-on-one by your child's classroom teacher, who will make sure that your child feels at ease and is comfortable. The literacy tasks are designed to identify a range of skills, such as word, sound and letter recognition, early writing abilities, and ability to retell storylines from books that are read to them. The numeracy tasks are related to early number concepts. They identify a range of skills such as number recognition, counting, early addition and subtraction skills, and ability to recognise repeating patterns. All of these are important literacy and numeracy skills that students will develop in their first year of school and beyond. Teachers may organise a follow-up meeting with you as the parent or caregiver, with information about the skills your child demonstrated during the assessment and ideas about how you can support your child during the first year at school. For ways to engage your child in literacy and numeracy at home, please visit the Department of Education's website, education.nsw.gov.au.
And that just, oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Belinda, would you like to just show the other tab? And that will just give people a little bit of information about the Department of Education also has some little short clips around literacy and numeracy. And there's also a booklet that can be downloaded. Just on that, I think, yeah, that's, yeah, thanks, Belinda.
That's okay.
Yeah. So there's some resources there that people can access. And there's some little short videos down the bottom as well, which give you a bit of extra information. Yeah, thanks, Belinda.
That's okay.
And I suppose the main thing really to remember from that is, you know, children come to school with a variety of skills and knowledge, and it's the teacher's job to meet where your child is at and help them to grow and learn. And, you know, kindergarten teachers are usually very, very passionate about their job, and they're very gifted and talented in being able to bring all those skills together and support each child where they, you know, how they come in. Like it said, it isn't something that you need to study for. It's not anything that you need to be concerned about. You know, your child will develop those skills in their own time. And as they start to see other children do things next year, do those different skills, they'll pick up more skills of their own as well. The next slide is really just the one that we showed earlier, just then when Belinda shared it. So there's a booklet there and some videos that you might like to have a look at. Okay, we're coming to the tail end of our presentation. So if there are any questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to do so. We're just going to have a little chat about connecting with your child's school. I know that schools can sometimes be difficult places, especially at the moment, with getting access in. I know there's a lot of, well, most schools are not letting parents in at all, but that still doesn't mean that you can't connect, you know, with your child's school. Just some things to consider. You know, follow the school's processes. Every school might have slightly different processes. Just check what your child's school, how they would like to be contacted. Check the school newsletter and website for details. Often they'll have good information on there as well. Remember to be patient and persistent, you know, gently persistent. Teachers' main job is to be on class, face-to-face teaching every day. You know, most primary teachers only get about 2 hours where they're not on class. So that's just something worth considering, that, you know, they're not available necessarily to be able to answer phone calls. So if you would like to have a phone call or arrange a meeting, often an email is a good way to try and arrange that. And also, you know, establish a positive relationship with your child's teacher. And I'm sure that's something that, you know, everyone would do. And it's really helpful because, you know, if there are any concerns or questions in the future, you know, you've got a really positive foundation to work from. And, you know, teachers want what's best for your child the same way that you do. Now, we just wanted to close with, you know, some, you might still have some concerns or questions around, is your child ready for school for next year? You know, talk to your child's school, the school that you're thinking about sending your child to, have a chat to your childcare, your early childhood service, or, you know, give us a ring if you'd like a little bit more information or you feel like we can guide you in the right direction. Also, you might have some early intervention practitioners, have a team around the child. If your child has some additional needs, like I said before, get make sure you get those professionals involved as part of the team. Okay, we've got some useful websites that you might be interested in. We're not giving handouts and we're not giving the slides out as they're part of our, professional use that we're using. So if you'd like to take a screenshot, that would be really good to do that now. So we've got a link there to the Department of Education Student Wellbeing Support, which takes you to that particular link takes you to a lot of different links from the Department of Education website. We also have our Early Ed website. Our Raising Children, that's not ours. raisingchildren.net.au is a really good Australian parenting website, which has a lot of research-based information in very parent-friendly language. So it's really accessible and lots of links. So you'll be on one topic and then you think, oh, how can I follow to another topic? And it's really helpful in that way as well. Positive partnerships, working together with parents and carers and educators of school-age children on the autism spectrum to provide current, relevant and evidence-informed information through workshops and online resources. That's quite interesting to get a little bit more information around autism if that's what you're after. Just going back to our Early Ed website, there are also some links on there. I think we're going to share that in a minute, aren't we, Belinda? So I won't go into that. There's a brochure on there. There's a few brochures that you can download which have to do with starting school. And our last slide is really just our references. So if you'd like, you can also take a screenshot of that.
Let's just go into the references. I've got a question here from Fergus.
Yeah.
If you could help out. Do we get the results of the best start, or is it only if there are issues or concerns?
I think that schools have different processes. So from what I gathered from that particular video, if your school has a process where they'll talk you through, then you will be given some information. Some schools don't do that, or maybe it depends on how many children are in each class. I know some of the schools I've worked in, they definitely will do that, or they'll email information. But, if you would like the results and you're interested in them, by all means, feel free to contact the school, because it is useful information for you to know. But one of the things just popped into my head then, just to remember as well, that, your child may have a vast range of skills that they may not necessarily demonstrate in that best start assessment. There are lots of parents over the years who have said to me, oh, but they know how to do that. But the tricky part is it's a brand new situation. It's a brand new school. They've come in. It's a new adult that they're interacting with. And, the adult's obviously very friendly because they're a teacher, but, it's still quite a tricky situation for a child to be in. So please don't be perturbed if your child doesn't necessarily demonstrate those skills. They will demonstrate them as they go along. And teachers are very aware that those skills aren't necessarily going to be shown in that assessment.
So, Kim, that kind of led to another question which has been raised, and that is, should my child know all letters and sounds before they start school? The question is before they start next year. No, they do not need to know all letters and sounds. Just like Kim is saying, children do come to school at differing levels. The teachers will gauge that and see where the children are at, and do the differentiated teaching, accommodating to various abilities and strengths, and build up that sound and letter recognition throughout the year. So you want to extend on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And also the same goes for numbers, that the same thing will happen. And often what you'll find with children too is, we can't predict how quickly they're going to learn those skills. So, they may not demonstrate them in the beginning, but then they may pick up on them very quickly, or they may need some, may take a little bit longer to build that foundation of skills. And however they come is fine. I think that's the main thing to remember. It's not something that needs to be studied for or worried about. If your child's interested and you want to follow their lead, and you do more of that, with bits of chalk on the ground, by all means do that. But don't make it something that they don't enjoy doing, because then they may come to school and not want to do it there either. So just follow their lead, the same as you would with play.
And I've heard some kindergarten teachers say sometimes they need to reteach children because the way we might teach them may not necessarily be conducive to the way that it is taught in school. For example, writing all in capitals might need to be retaught to teach uppercase, lowercase, letter formation and things like that. So that's another contributing factor that doesn't really matter if children don't know it by the time they start school.
Just go gently. Go gently and have fun, I think, is probably the main message. The last one, I think,
is the references.
References, yep.
And Kim, I think you were going to share the early ed slide.
That's right, yes. So just if people have taken a photo of the references, if they'd like to, and I will just, okay, now my brain has to remember how to do that. Hang on. So I am going to now share my, hang on, let me open it first. I was just saying to Belinda before, when my brain is ticking over, I talk out loud to help myself, so I apologise. I'm doing that now too. Share my screen. Stay connected. Here we go. Okay. Can you see that, Belinda?
Yeah, I can. So, Kim, if you just want to go back one slide, great.
Yes.
Thank you. So these are some free services through early ed that educators or parents can access and share around. These are some of the services that you can utilise, whether it be for your child starting school or whether it be for younger siblings. But some of the things include online story time. So this is on every Thursday and it's a supported interactive story time. It includes songs, stories, and it gives ideas and activities of things that you can do at home or in the Early Learning Centre with children. Another thing that Early Ed offers are the pop-up chats. Again, these are online and they are interactive chat sessions for families wanting support to help their children learn during the early years. Or you might be worried about children's development or just wanting to know a bit more about children's development. So there is only actually one session left, unfortunately, this term, and it's on the 11th of November. At 1 p.m. and that one will be on how to support your toddler's speech, language and development. So it can serve for toddlers, it also can serve for older children who might have some language delay. So that is the last pop-up chat for this term. Moving on, there's Learn to Play and Play to Learn. So this gives regular, low-cost, no-cost activities, inclusive activities that are sustainable play ideas that you can use in the natural home environment and routine. You can also get these ideas through Instagram and Facebook. It does provide regular handouts and ideas, so it keeps you refreshed and hopefully comes across a range of interests that your child might be able to fall back on that you can use to inspire learning in different ways. They're great play ideas. There's activities that are inclusive for all children, and it just emphasises that learning through play. It supports families to know how to help children in their home environment. Then we have active play, active learning. So these are resources highlighting play and learning opportunities found in outdoor local play spaces, so using the outdoor natural environment. This is not only for playgrounds, it's for parks, streetscapes, and in particular small neighbourhoods as well. So it tries to cover a range of outdoor environments. These active play ideas also support early childhood development and learning, and they create opportunities for sharing and connecting, also with neighbours, and this helps children develop physical strength, stamina, coordination, problem solving, be imaginative and be independent. So play does open up many learning opportunities and children don't even realise that they are learning when they're doing it. And then finally we have the ready to learn through story time. And this is supported interactive online story time sessions that can be available for individual children and families. Educators choose books to suit children's individual needs. Families also choose similar books and adjust the way that we help children to participate with storytelling. So it is individual and it's up to 3 sessions. At this stage, we are currently doing that virtually, and it does not matter if your child doesn't engage, because we will work with that as well. So there's some free resources that are at your availability. If you choose to use them, please get onto the Early Ed website and you can access that. Kim, can you just show the next slide, please? Thank you. So in terms of staying connected, you can subscribe to the Early Ed newsletters through our website. We do have emails that we send out. We've talked a bit about inclusion, supporting a child holistically, all areas of development, and the funding that we can access in order to support your child through those developmental needs as well. We have innovative solution funding, which helps long daycare centres to facilitate inclusion, and we also have sector development funding to support preschools to facilitate inclusion. So we're out there trying to get all children supported in various environments, home and learning centres, as well as the community. So we have a range of services. We have NDIS services. You can also use your Medicare for speech, OT, physio, private health fund. You can access services, and you might be through some supported programs as well. So there's paid programs and there's the free services that are available that I showed you in the previous slides. So that's all from me, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that was all we had this evening. So this might be the last chance if you do have any pressing questions that you might like to ask. We finished a little bit early. I hope it's not because I've talked too fast, because we tried to time management. But yeah, if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask us.
Rhiannon's saying thank you. We're really glad that we've relieved some anxieties. Rhiannon, I'm happy for you, and you're really looking forward to having a big school kid. That's beautiful.
That's exciting. Oh, actually, we have the poll. Let me just do our second poll.
Could you please show me that reference list again? I sure will, Lisa. So I'll let Kim do the poll, and then I will put that reference list back up for you.
Okay. All right, I'll just launch it now. It's the same question we had before. So we're just, curious as to whether there was a shift.
You're welcome to all these people that are saying thank you. Lisa, Kylie, Sol, glad that it's helpful for you as an educator as well. Jung, you're welcome. Lucy, yes, thank you everyone. It's really great feedback. Glad you found it useful. And just remember, preparing your children for school, this is a lifelong process. But we are very, very aware. Oh, great.
Yeah, so we've sort of maybe had a little bit of a shift, but that's okay. That's good.
That's great.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and thank you for coming along tonight. I know it hasn't been, I haven't been able to see, we haven't been able to see any faces, which is a little bit disconcerting for the teacher in me. But yeah, it's lovely to have the comments, and it's good. Thank you for your questions and for your comments. I'm glad it's been helpful.
And if you do want a recording sent out to you, please email, I will put it in the chat, services@earlyed.com.au. And this recording can be sent out to people that make that request.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we'll finish here.
Thanks,
And if there are any other questions, I think people can email that email address as well if they have questions. Belinda, is that correct?
Correct.
Yep, great. All right. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.